privilege of being the moderator for this evening's Meet the Candidates Forum. My day job is Director of Workforce Diversity for the Missouri Department of Transportation, but I'm here in my volunteer capacity as a concerned citizen, just as each of you, I know, came for that reason, to see who the next leader of our Metropolitan Police Department is going to be. So I want to welcome you, each of you, and thank you for coming to be here this evening. We look forward to a chance for these candidates to show themselves to us and to answer questions so that we can get to know who they are. The process that brought us here has been a 6-month national search that was led by a consulting group and by a Citizens Advisory Council committee, some of whom are in the room. And the candidates have been vetted through interviews with those groups, as well as taken standardized assessments. And this is the finalist pool that is being presented to us. I think this, for all of us, is the first time that we're getting to meet the candidates face to face. I welcome each of you for this, and thank you for your willingness to step up and serve and to meet the community. I want to do a couple of thank yous. One first to St. Louis University. I really appreciate the hospitality of having us here. Fred Pastello in particular, who allowed us and provided the space for this event to happen. I also want to introduce the two people who are serving as interpreters for this evening. Shelley Jones, who's in front of you now, and Casey Gill, and they will take turns providing American Sign Language interpretation for the event so that we have access for people for whom that's necessary. So the process as we have designed it is there was an online opportunity to submit questions in advance of this forum, and some were taken today as well. As you can imagine, there were hundreds of questions that were submitted. Impossible for us to ask each candidate all the questions that were submitted. But I just want you to know that they'll get a chance to interact with them through different processes in their interviews. But we can't ask them all. I just want to make sure you know that we're going to try to offer a sampling of the themes and questions that came forward through the process of you and other community members inquiring about things you wanted to know about their leadership style and their vision for the region. So before we get into the question part, I want to give each candidate a chance to introduce themselves. You will have up to 5 minutes to come to the mic, to talk to the community, to tell them who you are, what you want them to know about you, what makes you important, what makes you a good candidate for this role, and we will go in order and alphabet. Oh, I want to say that there are 5 names on the list that you were given, and I mean 6 names on the list you were given, and one of the candidates isn't here at the moment. Don't know whether or not that candidate will arrive or not, but we didn't want to wait any longer, so we're starting without her. So we're going to start with the next person in line alphabetically is Stephen Geron. Geron, yes, please. I think that mic is live, right? And you have up to 5 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Max Geron, and I am a 25-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department. I'm currently the major assigned over vice narcotics, the gang unit, the fugitive unit, recently assigned to the Southeast Patrol Division. My compliments to your city for an incredibly thorough and interactive process to hire the next police chief. Regardless of which one of us it turns out to be, I can guarantee you, looking at this candidate pool, that St. Louis is going to benefit with an excellent police chief. The candidates are really top-notch, and I'm proud to be associated with them. I am a military brat, was born in Germany. My dad was in the Air Force. I have lived in Dallas for the last 30-plus years, and had the privilege to work for the Dallas Police Department in various capacities. I've been really blessed to have a multifaceted career doing a bunch of different jobs and leadership positions, from public information officer to SWAT to patrol officer to riding bikes in Oak Cliff, Texas, in the southwest part of town. And I've been fortunate to get to work with very diverse communities and establish those critical partnerships that are necessary for community policing, and see communities change in partnership with their police department. I have experienced the tragedies that come with this job, losing friends and loved ones, and seeing the toll that the stress can take on officers every day. And I'm excited to try to work to improve not only the relationship between the police department and the community, but the relationship of the officers among themselves, and to provide for them an atmosphere that is healthy and encouraging, because I know that this community, just like so many others across the country, are incredibly supportive. I think and I told this to the committee today, if you look at how you voted on the recent Proposition P, the communities that are plagued with crime overwhelmingly support their police, and they want their police to be successful, and they want to be partners with them. And I'm excited to lead the way in doing that. I studied policing protest at the Naval Postgraduate School. I wrote my master's thesis on that topic for strategies, 21st century strategies for policing protest, and have a love and respect for the Constitution, and providing a safe environment for the public to express their dissent with how government operates and how we do things. So I look forward to bringing that expertise and that experience and working with some of the most outstanding officers that this country has to offer, and certainly the best here in Missouri. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your introduction. And next we will invite John Hayden.
Good evening. My name is Major John Hayden. I'm the commander currently of the North Patrol Division in the St. Louis Police Department. I've been on for 30 years. I've been born and raised in the city. I've lived in St. Louis my whole life. I went to high school here. I went to elementary school here. I went to college here. I've stayed here the whole time. And so I'm dedicated to the city. I love my city, and I'm proud to be representative of it. When Mayor Cruson, after she had taken office a couple of days into office after she'd taken the oath, she mentioned, some reporter walked up to her and asked her, what is she looking for in the next police chief? And she said that, I'm looking for a person with a stellar reputation and who also has a proven track record, who's both a good cop and a fair and inclusive individual, who has the leadership skills to lead the department and be a community leader. Those were her 6 criteria. As soon as she mentioned that, I knew that she was talking to me. I have a strong reputation on the department. I've been the commander of the Internal Affairs Division. I've been the executive aide to Chief Mopa, and I have I was, like I said, as I commanded the Internal Affairs Division, I held a lot of officers accountable for misconduct, and unfortunately, even in some instances, they even had to go to prison. And so I'm no stranger to holding people accountable. I hold myself accountable as well. Like I said, my administrative background is extensive, and I also have just an extensive law enforcement, strict law enforcement side as well. I've been a commander of a detective bureau. I was commander of District 5, the newly formed District 5. I was the commander of District 8, and like I said again, I'm currently the commander of the North Patrol Division, which patrols the most dangerous streets in the city, the most highest violent crime that we have. And so we're doing a good job. There are some ways and ideas in which I think we could do even better. And I'm, like I said, again, proud to represent my city and proud to be here and would love to serve as your chief.
Thank you. Chief Humphrey.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here. This is one of the things, and this is one of the reasons why I believe God led me to apply for this position. When you look around in the room and you see the connections and the interest that the citizens of St. Louis have in this process, that says a lot. That lets you know that this city really wants the best. It wants to be the safest city. It wants to have a city that is vibrant, a city that is, when it's in the national news, they talk about how vibrant and how well the city is maintained. And that's what the next chief is going to have to work with. My name is Keith Humphrey. I have been in law enforcement nearly 30 years. I am currently the police chief of the city of Norman, Oklahoma. And I am a positivist. And if anyone wants to know what a positivist is, I'm positive for change, I have vision for change, and I'm a realist that if we work together, we can make it happen. That's what I believe. This is really how do you say it? It's really a no-brainer. And when it comes to the citizens of St. Louis want the violence to stop. The citizens of St. Louis want an inclusive community. They want a police department in which the chief holds everyone accountable because the citizens are holding the chief accountable. The chief sets the tone for the department and he sets the tone for the community. When I got into law enforcement 29 years ago, I set my sights on being the chief of a major city. And one of the things that I always have done, I've always taken the assignments, the difficult assignments that others don't want, because I felt like as a police chief, you need to learn every aspect. You cannot lead officers and you cannot lead a city if you don't know what your officers are doing and what they're supposed to do, and if you don't know what citizens are thinking. That has prepared me for this position. That has prepared me for this position. I believe with the hard work and rolling up sleeves of our department and our community, we've got this whooped. We've got it whooped. The problem is we need to find what's causing the problems, what's causing the racial disparities, what's causing the violence. We know what the symptoms are. We need to find the cause. One of the things that I would like to do is get out in the community and talk to the citizens, and especially the areas where the citizens don't feel the inclusiveness. I'm a person that I will listen. I don't take things personally. I believe if you listen to what people are saying, you can hear what they're wanting. You can also hear how to solve the problem. You cannot say once, I hear you, and then the same things continue. There's a great opportunity here. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity for the citizens of this city and the men and women of this department. You want someone who's not afraid to make the right decisions. You want someone who's not afraid to stand up for what is right, and you want someone who's going to bring change. Someone who, I'm in a unique situation. I'm an African-American male who's currently a police chief, and I'm vying for the police chief's job here in St. Louis. I have the ability, with that fact, I have the ability to make things happen, positive things. I have an ability to see it on the African-American and minority side. I have the ability to see it on law enforcement side. My responsibility would be bring the two groups together. It's not going to be easy. And one of the things, in closing, one of the things that I would like people to understand is that 3% of the population causes 97% of the problems. We need to focus on those individuals who are willing to help us, and that's how we take the community back. And that's how we become a better police department, and it's all going to take place with your assistance. Thank you all.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Patrick Melvin. I am a 32-year veteran in law enforcement. I am the husband of Rhonda. A week from tomorrow, will be 27 years that we will be celebrating our anniversary. We have 3 wonderful children. I'm the dad of 3. Jasmine, my princess, is the oldest. She's a United States Navy officer stationed, deployed in Japan right now. My son Patrick, my namesake, is a graduate of Harris-Stowe State University. Yes, that's right. And he is also a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Are there any in the house? My youngest son, Lorenzo, the baby, and the baby is the biggest in our family. He played 4 years of football. He is now a Phoenix police officer for the city of Phoenix, Arizona. I started my career with the city of Phoenix. I did 21 years with the city of Phoenix, retiring at the rank of police commander, 2-star. Took the experience from the city of Phoenix and was nationally recruited after national recruitment and went to the city of Maricopa, Arizona. Maricopa was a city of 0 at that time as far as the police department. I was tasked with facilitating, coordinating, and building that department from the ground up. We had no cars, no uniforms, no buildings, no anything. And right now, that department is nationally accredited through the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. I took that experience. I rose to the rank of assistant city manager at that department. And then I went to Scottsdale, Arizona, to tribal community, an entire different type of policing, tribal policing. I spent 5 years there from 2011 to 2016 at the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community in Scottsdale, Arizona. I took that, and matter of fact, as a result of all of our exploits, the team exploits of my staff and the people we hired, I was deemed the Man of the Year in 2007 for the exploits that we did as a team there in the city of Maricopa. From there, I went to, as I mentioned, the Scottsdale, Arizona, the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community Department, Urban Department, right in the middle of Scottsdale, Arizona. Learned a lot, was able to testify on Capitol Hill on different tribal issues, even became the vice chair for tribal country for the International Chiefs of Police Association. I took that experience. I'm actually a native of the state of Texas. I know you can tell by my accent. My dad was a military man, and we traveled across the country, and Arizona became our home. However, we had the opportunity to go back home. I still have relatives in the Houston area on both sides of my family. So after spending about 4.5 years, almost 5 years at the tribal community, the Port Arthur Police Department in Southeast Texas was open. It's about an hour, 20 minutes from Houston, and took my experience there. After national recruitment, was very blessed to go there, and now I have the benefit of being with close to family there. My immediate family is still in Arizona, but my mom and my brothers and sisters and siblings, but I have relatives in the Houston area. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I've always been to and sought out challenges my entire career. I see this as an opportunity. I'm a community-based policing officer. It was funny, I was just thinking, in my entire career, I've always lived in the community that I've policed. And now my youngest son, I mentioned my youngest son, Lorenzo, is a brand new police officer for the city of Phoenix, and now he lives, is purchasing a house in the city, in the precinct that he works in. So all those times we were bringing the kids around to the different community events and community social events and the carnivals and car shows, etc., it rubbed off on my son. All my children are protect and serve in some kind of way. My daughter being in the military, my eldest son, Patrick, working with the youth in the community, and then also my son, Lorenzo, who's a police officer. I count it an honor and a blessing, and I actually count law enforcement as my ministry of professional policing. Being professional, being progressive, and holding myself accountable is something that's been a part of my career my entire 32 years. I'm looking forward to this opportunity. I'm just blessed to have the opportunity to be here. As someone mentioned earlier, I commend the city of St. Louis for a vigorous process. Although I'm glad to be here, I'm going to be glad when the process is actually over with. Because it has been quite vigorous. But you know what? I'm sure you'll get the best candidate that's the best fit for your city. And I'd like to call it my city one day. I'm looking forward to the dialogue we're going to have this evening. I look forward to explaining my vision of accountability, being progressive policing, and I look forward to not only holding myself accountable to you, to myself, to my family, but to the citizens of St. Louis. Thank you for this opportunity, and they're coming to pull my jacket, so I look forward to talking to you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Larry O'Toole. I was born and raised in the city of St. Louis, lived here all my life. I went to Southeast Missouri State University, got my bachelor's degree. I have my master's degree from Lindenwood University, business administration. I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy. I'm a graduate of the Police Executive Research Association Senior Management Institute of Police. I'm a graduate of the Executive Leaders Program from the Naval Postgraduate Academy. I'm a graduate of the National Executive Institute with the FBI, as well as a graduate of the Anti-Defamation League Advanced Training School. I have 36 years in law enforcement, 34 with the city of St. Louis. I have served in every bureau in the community, in the department, all the way up from being a detective, all the way up to being in the present position that I'm in now. I'm proud to be a St. Louisan. I'm proud to work for the St. Louis Police Department. I can tell you there's so many good things going on in St. Louis. If you go up, and one of the reasons why I'm applying for this job, if you go to Kings Highway and look at the expansion going on in Barnes Hospital, go east, look at the Cortex area and what's going on there, to the Grove neighborhood with the expansion and development that's going on down there. Today, the Cardinals announced the groundbreaking of Phase 2 of the Ballpark Village. In addition to that, last week there was an announcement of a 33-story apartment building going up downtown. The National Park Service with the Arch expansion, Keener Plaza, the Union Station, the aquarium and the aquarium and the Ferris wheel going in there. But the number one development that goes on is the NGA development that's going on. If you look at what our city does when they come together to solve issues, if we came together to put the NGA in St. Louis, there's so much that we can do when we work together. I look forward to the opportunity to working with everyone to bring St. Louis, to address those issues that are in St. Louis, just the way that development goes, we can continue to go with addressing the issues in our city. So I thank you all. I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much.
There's feedback. You'll stand right there. And our final candidate for the position, please welcome Mary Ann Spears.
Good evening. Good evening. Center. Is Center here? Yes. Good evening. I apologize profusely. I am so sorry to be late as I was. And I appreciate you all for being here.
I don't know what to do.
Don't know what to do. I'm sorry.
Why don't you step back and take this mic?
Sure. I am a 31-year veteran. I've been in the police department for that long, and it's been a very good department to me. I met my husband, Michael, around him. We've been together for 29 years. We've been in the department, we have 4 kids. I am the youngest of 12 children. Yeah, Mom and Dad pretty busy, but I was raised by a single mom. Okay. It's very important for me to be here tonight. I am so excited. To be honest with you, I'm very humble. I'm going to try to keep it together because a person like me doesn't generally get to try out for an event like this, for a position as this. So I'm a little nervous. I'm so sorry. I apologize up front. But I am more than qualified to be your chief of police. I've been more than happy to serve the city of St. Louis. I was born in Puerto. Just to those of you who don't know about Puerto, just think about Green, Chicago. It was low income. They kicked us out in 1962 because my sister was a little mischievous. The landlord told my mother that, and my mother said, don't do this. And he said, lady, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you. You should not be raising kids here in this project. It's not a place, it's a place of decadence at that point. We moved in, it was brand new, but then it kind of went downhill. In any case, I need to be here because there needs to be more women in leadership. And the St. Louis is ready for a change. If I am, and I want to say that if I am chosen to be your chief, we're going to be talking a lot about constitutional issues. I'm going to be a constitutional advocate. We're going to make sure everybody's civil rights are recognized. I don't care who you are, what part of town that you're from. It's all about respect, procedural justice, legitimacy. We need to get some of that legitimacy back. You guys used to trust us. You don't as much. There's a lot of protests going on, and I understand that, but I need to understand more. So I'm going to be intentional about, excuse me, learning, but more importantly, listening to your concerns. And we're going to act on that. We're going to do the best we can to service you. And that's basically all I have at this point. I imagine you have questions. I'm going to sit down and take your questions along with the other fine gentlemen that I'm competing against.
Thank you very much. So as I stated at the beginning, there were hundreds of questions that were submitted for consideration. And I'm going to be able to, I'm going to ask each person to speak to every question that we ask. You get 2 minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes to speak to the question. We want to get as many as we can, but there's a lot of them. And so this is not a dialogue tonight. This is not a chance for you to ask questions. Questions have been submitted, and they're going to respond to the ones that we can. I think it's responsible for me to ask that you give them a chance to speak. And I understand the importance of protest, but I just want I do want to give everyone a chance to be heard, to answer the questions to the best of their ability, and for us to then be able to get a sense of who they are in this forum. So the first question, you each get to go to the podium so people can see you. So you start first, and I'll ask you. Make sure that mic is working.
I believe it's working.
All right. So the first question that's been submitted, given the broken community relationship between the community and the police, what are your plans to build this bridge and start to heal the divide?
Yes, one thing that we can do right away is start respecting people. I know oftentimes when I go to community meetings, people say that they don't have a really close connection with the police. They talk about the fact that police officers in their wards don't have a lot of personal time spent with them, and people are asking for that, and they deserve that. And so what we'll do right away is and I always lead by example. What we'll do right away is just start spending more. We can do things like spend 20 minutes per day in a neighborhood. But hey, I have a concept that I've started before. It's called the mobile office, and I would lead by example. And so what I actually do, a couple of different instances where we learned that people were complaining about, like for example, a neighborhood drug house. And you don't have officers to be able to sit there all day long and that type of thing. But I knew that I could actually be visible. And so what I did is I took my office, I said, I'm going to create a situation where I'm actually sitting on a troubled street where maybe dope sales are pretty prevalent. Sit in my office, I had our print division make a sign that actually said, Captain Hayden, Commander of District 5. And when I did that, people actually came out and talked to me. A lot of neighbors came out and talked. We sent our community outreach officers out there as well, and they got a chance to knock on doors and make connections with people. So the first thing we do, like I say, I lead by example. I would encourage the captains and the lieutenants and the sergeants and the officers do likewise. But it's always hard, it's always difficult to send the message when people don't see you doing things, and I never ask people to do things that I don't do. And so I would be honored to have the chief's mobile office in various neighborhoods. But interestingly enough, it not only is a visible piece, but it also was a deterrent. I mean, hey, when we set that mobile office in the 700 block of Arbor, which is known for being high drug activity, hey, it interfered with those drug sales over there. And so it was at least twofold. One, visibility allowed me to see the neighbors and talk to people, and our community outreach officers were able to knock on doors, pass out Crime Stoppers notifications, pass out other handbills, other crime information, and then it gave me an opportunity to meet people. But hey, the drug dealers on that block had to go elsewhere for that period of time, and it gave people some relief for a moment. And a lot of times when you see people in the neighborhoods and they talk about a lot of the same things, you might come to a community meeting and they're complaining about the same things over and over again. And we have to be more responsive as an agency. We have to be more responsive, and we have to be more active. And so, again, that broken piece is going to come in one way. Healing that broken relationship is going to come one way, by spending more quality time with the people whom we serve. All right.
Trying to work out this. So will you speak closest to this mic? I think that's what.
Will you repeat the question, sir?
I will repeat the question. Given the broken community relationships between the community and the police, what are your plans to build this bridge and start to heal the divide?
Thank you, sir. I think leadership begins at the top. I think it's my responsibility to lead by example. Being a military officer myself, it is incumbent upon me to lead from the front, not from the rear. The first thing I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm not going to tell you what your problems are. I'm going to have listening sessions throughout the city. I want to hear exactly what the issues are and what you perceive the issues to be. That way, if I hear directly from you, and I am that officer, and I am that police chief that is out and about in the community, then I'll know how to properly address with my officers here in the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, with my senior command staff, with my command staff, with my supervisors, and with the officers. I think each officer here is an ambassador of the police department. And before you can go out and start doing the work, you got to know what your mission is. And I need you to tell me what your mission is. I think first, communication is so important. Communication can settle a lot of stuff. Someone mentioned earlier about the protesting and demonstrations. I think it is important to build those partnerships and relationships and collaborations prior to a catastrophic situation or an emergency, so that when an emergency does occur, those relationships that we built will come into play. The faith-based community is one of our largest assets in our community, all of them. Please invite me to your churches, to your synagogues, to your places of worship, because that's where not only can I reach a few more citizens of St. Louis there, but you can assist me meet some of the members of your congregation. I think if we have the opportunity to communicate, to sit down, I host what's called the Chat with the Chief. I host a radio program the first Thursday of every month. That's one good communication aspect. But also, I go to the public library and the city hall once every quarter, and I field questions, and we have dialogue, myself personally and members of the community. So how can we build that divide? How can we increase the trust? Communication. Sitting down, one-on-one, in a group, talking back and forth. I believe that will start to build the trust, the respect. My motto has always been that here at the police department, we are to protect and serve while reducing crime and increasing the perception of safety in our community, treating everyone with dignity and respect and professionalism and even privacy when appropriate. So when I do have the opportunity, when I do become your police chief, your police commissioner, That's one of the first things I'm going to do. I'm going to go have listening sessions. I'm going to listen to you so that you can tell me how we as a police department can help police the community and make it safer for you. Thank you.
Broken relationships. First thing I'm going to do is have a community survey to find out what are the issues. We know of a lot of issues, but to find out exactly what the issues are and how we go about fixing them. Like any relationships, the key is communications. Relationships is about trust and giving people a voice and being heard. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to increase transparency and accountability on the police department. Our website is where I'm going to start to put all of our orders and policies so everyone can see this. Publish all of our reports that we have that we can regarding discipline, so everybody knows, and so that there is that accountability for everyone to see the transparency. Footbeats. We need to get into the neighborhoods and do more patrols in those high crime areas. We know who the bad criminals are, we just don't know who the good people are, and that's one of our problems. Community policing is a key to my strategies, is getting out there, to knowing the good people, to get the cooperation we need to earn their trust. Increased accountability, like I said, is another big issue with me. Having served in all the different bureaus, professional standards, where I oversaw the Internal Affairs Division. But again, as was said earlier, it's about communications, to hear people, to give everyone a voice from all over the city, develop the solutions to that, and move forward as one city.
Can I chime in? I'm going to ask that you be respectful as well. This is my acting chief. He has been my commissioner. He has been my lieutenant colonel. He has been my friend and my mentor. Now, we're not going to respect him, then I can't stay, and I can't answer. I can't participate. I just won't be a party. So please, now, okay, please.
Excuse me. My name is Captain Geron Walker. I'm the assistant director of PPS at St. Louis University. This is St. Louis University home building. If you guys cannot be respected, I'm going to ask you to leave. We're trying to get through this. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate everything you guys do.
I think that this is the greatest form of respect.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you.
You have to ask me again.
Okay, you don't have a problem.
I'm sorry you're not staying.
Shame on you. Give these men and ladies the respect that they deserve. This is a public forum for us to information from them, not to hear from you.
I really want to echo one more time the request is for us to come and listen to these candidates. They have been selected by a citizen advisory committee as the finalists in a long search. They are here to talk to us and to show themselves to us. I'm hoping that we can stay and that we can listen and we can give them our attention while we do that. So I'm going to return to Ms. N and ask you to answer the question. Do you need the question repeated?
Yes.
Given the broken community relationship between the community and the police, what are your plans to build this bridge and start to heal the divide?
First thing we're gonna do as chief, we're gonna get out of those cars. We're gonna have conversations with people. I'm gonna talk to people till they're blue in the face. There's a young man over there, he knows what I'm talking about, and when he comes to my office, when any young person comes to my office, I'm about building, I'm about professionalism, I'm about professional development, and mentoring these young officers who are gonna be our future leaders. I feel that same way about my community. When I was district commander of the 5th and 6th district, we treated that place like it was our Ladue. We treated those people with respect. Community policing and crime reduction. I don't know why it's taken us so long to realize the two go hand in hand. You get the community to buy in. The first thing you have to do is get community input. We haven't been as good as we should be with that. We're gonna get better, I can guarantee you that. But that's where we should start. There are some things I want us, some procedures and some projects, programs we're already doing. I plan on continuing to do them. The GREAT program, we got the ice cream truck where the kids come, they love it. We're gonna be doing that. We're looking at the cadet program. Oh, we're gonna be working a lot. The guy that runs the community engagement unit, he's gonna be overworked, as is our PI, our public information people. We need to talk to you guys more. Transparency. When something happens, we need to let you know that it's happening. We can't give away the form, but we can make sure you're informed. Educate and transform. That's the goals for me as I think about how I will occupy the role of commissioner. There's some other programs we're thinking about, and we're working with Alderman Reed on, and done buyback, and the chief is initiating one of those the next 2 weeks. The GREAT program. Then there's one I want to start called the Police and Pastor Against Crime program. That's where we go at the housing complexes that have high cost for service. And we get the pastors involved, the churches involved, and the police involved, and we form a relationship whereas we find out who the bad guys are, and we make sure we eradicate the place of it. You get community outreach for the church. You get a mutual understanding with the police department where you have engagement and input as to what's going on in those complexes, and it's just good for everybody. Those are some of the things I hope to do, and as I think I stated before, we're going to do the cadet program. That's something St. Louis County is doing right now. It has that education incentive. The good Captain Johnson is working on that, and I look forward to working with him to make that happen and bring it to St. Louis. I talk about constitutional, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I look around the room and I think there's a question if the community's broken. I don't think the community's broken. I think the community has some fragmented pieces that need to be swept up. The first thing that I find is very important is that the police department, we have to remember that we exist because the taxpayers like yourself allow us to exist. We have a responsibility to provide top-notch quality service to each and every person in the city. We've got to respect our communities. And it's like someone said earlier, it starts from the top. I set the tone. I can't say one thing to the community and go back and say another thing to the officers. I can't say one thing to the officers and go back and tell the community everything. As a leader, you have to realize that your employees are watching every move you make. And so when you don't care or you show a sense of uncaring about a community, they're going to do the exact same thing. I don't think that's the case in every police department. The things that I've read about the city and about the police department, this is an attainable solution. It's possible. Procedural justice. We have to educate our community on procedural justice. I'm going to be pushing for that because a lot of citizens do not understand what their rights are. A lot of citizens don't have the ability to know what the First and Second and Third and Fourth Amendment says, so we need to educate our community. We also need to educate the officers about that because some officers don't understand that also. And so those are things that we have to work on. One of the things I would like to do is I would like to make the community feel as if they are humanized. I don't want a community that feels like they're being dehumanized based on the way they look, based on where they live. I want to bring information to the community, and I want to bring information back into the department. People want to know, citizens want to know what's actually happening in their community. If I tell you right now we had this many homicides or this many violent cases, I'm not telling you anything. But if I tell you how these happen and what we're doing to address that, it makes you feel a little bit better. And at the same time, you're going to want to help us. You're going to want to help us fight that fight. And one of the last things that I think is very important, that we track our community-oriented policing hours. Not just to say that we're getting out of the car and we're talking to people. We need productive, proactive, and serious conversations, and that information needs to be logged down. If we spend 5 hours in a community, you put that down. At the end of the month, you tally that up so the community know that you really are have their best interests at heart. Thank you.
You know, you don't care what we say until you know that we care about you. Every officer needs to know that they have to care for each citizen as though that citizen were a member of his or her family. And the officers have to understand that an open and transparent department is one that works together with its police department. So first of all, I'll meet with the most vocal critics and those that want to provide suggestions to say, hey, Chief, here's what you need to know, and here's where the police department's broken, and start working on those issues. I can tell you right now, just from looking at some of what I saw, taking a quick tour of North St. Louis yesterday, there are some efficiencies that we're missing, that if you focus your resources and you utilize your technology a little bit better, you're going to be more efficient, and you're going to be able to provide your officers that time to get out of the cars, to walk that foot patrol, to meet with the citizens, so that they're not just somebody in a car, not just a blue suit in a car driving by, but it's Officer Johnson or Officer Smith, and I know I can call them because they care about me. They care about my children. And then we're going to have those community meetings, and we're going to have those committees that help us decide whether or not we want to employ the next generation of technology that comes in and addresses our civil liberties. We're going to have that discussion with the community so that you have voice and you have input and you have those processes to decide, do I want this level of observation or this level of intrusion into my civil liberties done by my police department? And you'll know you'll have had a voice and a measure of decision in how you are policed. Because ultimately, we have no authority other than that which is granted by you, the citizen. And we have to withhold that trust and protect it. And I will do that by meeting with the citizens, establishing and maintaining our crime watch groups, and then holding ourselves accountable through the use of open data by pushing out that information so that you can say, hey, you said you were going to meet this many hours with the community. You're 15% short. What are you going to do about it? So that you know where we stand. And we're going to focus, as others have said, on procedural justice, and so that everybody is treated fairly, both inside and outside the department. Thank you.
So that first question was one that was asked many, many times, and it was about the relationships between the police and the community. Another question that was submitted multiple times actually focused on one of the questions internal to the department. So the question that I pose to you is, what are your plans to join the two unions together? How will you heal the divide that exists within the department as exemplified by two distinct unions? We'll start with you.
Appreciate the background. So I'll tell you, in the city of Dallas, we've had a number of unions my entire career. There have been efforts across both sides of the aisle to join those unions into one. And I don't know that I can make that union happen because each group has distinct ideas about what needs to happen. But what I can tell you is that I will meet and work with those unions And through procedural justice and through taking care of the officer's rights and the citizen's rights, treat every officer fairly in the process so that they know that if they're going to go through an internal affairs process, that it will be the same regardless of their race or gender or whatever other variable there is. So they can trust in that process, just as you, the citizen, can know that if I file a complaint against an officer, it'll be legitimately investigated, and I'll know the findings once you make that report. And so that you'll know that your complaints are being taken seriously and that they are being followed up on. Too many times investigations take a long time, and that's unacceptable. You make a complaint, you want that complaint followed up on, you want it investigated. And by the same token, the officer wants to know that he or she's not going to be subject to arbitrary discipline depending upon who he is or what views he holds. So treating officers fairly and then providing that environment or that opportunity for them to decide whether or not they want to join those two unions. I think you can exist with two unions that are treated equally and fairly and still have an outstanding police department and move forward as it goes. Thank you.
How's that? Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. We might as well leave. I got the job. Let's go. I'll tell you, Max, at least the lights didn't go off on me. All right. Everybody has to understand the purpose of unions and the history of unions, and also the reason why you have a majority union and you have minority unions. You have to understand how that happened. And once citizens understand that and once officers understand that, then I think it causes a road, getting on the road to healing. This is what I do on a regular basis. I meet with my union president every month. Meet with him every month. I've had, before I went to Norman, I had 2 unions at the city of Lancaster. I met with each one of the presidents. I had the main union and I had the African American union. I met with each president on the same day, and then we met together because I did not want anything that I said to not be carried back as the truth, because each organization has different issues, different concerns. It's okay to have 2 unions, but the kicker is you have to respect each other. You have to respect each other. I understand it. I think a lot of people understand that you have 2 unions based on the fact that you have the NAACP, you have IACP, you have Noble. People understand that. As long as the unions don't have a lot of strife, they don't hate each other, at the end of the day, they understand that we're all here for the same purpose. Because this is the deal. If I've got 2 unions fighting, how can a police department go out into the city and help clean up the city when you have mess internally? So you have to get that focus over to your union representatives, that the raises that you want are at the mercy of the citizens, and they are not going to do anything for us if they don't believe they can trust us and if we can't get ourselves together. And so those are the main focuses I'm going to be pushing. Unions are here, and there's nothing that we can do about that, but we can work together to make you all feel comfortable that we're doing the right thing.
I want to go back a little bit and talk about some words we're tossing around, and I got here a little late, and again, I apologize. But I want to make sure we're understanding what those words mean. Legitimacy and procedural justice. They may have explained it already, but I'm going to go ahead and give you my take on legitimacy. Is you all giving us the authority to do our job. working with us, because you believe in us, you believe the laws are just and we're enforcing them. We've lost a little bit of that. That's what I stated before. Procedural justice, they talk about giving you a voice, making sure you have a voice in the say of our policies and things like that and the way we react to situations. The biggest word in there for me is respect. That's one of the tenets. We've got to have respect for each other, coming and going. And then there's neutrality. You got to be neutral. The same thing that goes on the north side got to go on the south side. Whatever goes on the south side got to happen on the north side. We got to be fair. We got to be equal. And that's the problem. I think that's partially the reason we're in the predicament we're in now. As far as police unions, yeah, we do have two: the Ethical Society of Police, and then we have the St. Louis Police Association. My thoughts about that, again, yeah, I would meet with them monthly, and I wouldn't meet one without the other. And I would build a relationship, because she's right. We've got to get their buy-in to get cooperation and get some things done for the officers, especially as it relates to discipline. I think sometimes they feel left out. I would make sure they're not left out and convey what I could, but the stuff in confidence I can't share. But I can make sure they understand that we're being transparent. And I would do that like dutifully. I would do that like right away. I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't stall on it. Because when you stall, you make things seem suspicious. That's what I would do to handle that situation. Thank you.
Two unions on the police department. We have 4 unions on the police department. We have the Ethical Society, we have the Police Officers Association, we have the Civilian Union, and we have the Leadership Union. So there's 4 separate unions. None of them represent all the employees of our agency. When I took over as interim, I brought all those unions together. First time they were all in the room together. In order to come together, in order to address problems, you have to come together and discuss those. You first start on what you agree on. After you move forward, after you agree on, and the unions got to understand how negatively their separation, their divide, how it affects the police department, but more importantly, how that divide affects the community. Once they understand that, we can move together and try to work together on what the differences are. But we have to, all the unions have to work together. And that's how I would meet with all of them. In order to move forward, everybody's got to walk in the same direction. That would be my message to those unions, and work with all the unions to do that. But remember, there are 4 unions on the police department. Thank you.
I want to know why a police
Asshole to them while black people can't see their court date.
Jason Stockley stayed as long as he did.
Promise us change and bring
If we
us
ain't got
the same people. No, we're not taking it anymore as people.
And if
No.
you stand for them, you want to
You invited us here.
You invited us.
Never been function.
You wanted.
You invited us here.
They say they wanted the public's opinion, but they really didn't want it, because if that's the case, O'Toole would be standing right here. Steady line.
And I want to continue to give the other candidates
Process is fraudulent.
a chance to answer the question. So, would you?
Notice only one candidate has been interrupted. Notice only one candidate has been interrupted.
Yes. The unions, as the interim chief mentioned, there actually are 4 unions, but the unions that have most of the officers, black and white, in them, one is the Ethical Society of Police, predominantly 98% African American, and one is the Police Officers Association, predominantly white officers. I have been a member of both organizations for 30 years. I also, what I didn't tell you earlier about one of my career points was the fact that I trained in the academy. I was an instructor in the academy for 5 years. So in that period of time, we actually trained about 500 officers. And so for a while, when we had 1,500 officers, I had personally trained and formed that mentor-mentee relationship with 500 people. Many of those officers are still in the department, and many of them now hold the ranks of lieutenant and sergeant. And so I believe that I have the most personal contact with the members of in other words, I have the largest sphere of influence to make change when it comes to race relations. I said a lot of them still consider me a mentor, and that's not including the black and white officers and officers of various gender expressions. I also have a personal close relationships with many of officers of all ethnicities and genders and gender expressions. And so what I'm trying to say is that you start off with a mentor-mentee relationship, but I also have strong personal relationships with many members on the department. I believe that I'm the person that has the most probability and possibility of making change when it comes to race relations. All of them consider me a fair person. All of them consider me an honest person. All of them consider me a person that's level-headed, and that, hey, when there are issues that come before us, hey, they believe that I'm a person that can say what's fair and not fair. My reputation is about fairness and equity. And so I have, when people have had concerns about race relations in the past, members of the Ethical Society have come to me and asked if I could intervene. Likewise, members of the association have come to me and asked if I can intervene. And so I believe that I'm the person that's uniquely qualified to bring the department together when it comes to race relations.
I think one of the first things I mentioned that I do externally to the police department, but I also would like to talk about what I do internally within the police department. One of the first things I do is, what I'm planning to do, is do an analysis of the entire chain of command, up and down the chain of command. We want to make sure that the things that we're doing are the right and most effective things, and we can't forget our number one goal, and that is to protect and serve, and that's serve our community. Now, with the formation or the merging of the two bargaining associations, obviously there's some history to why there are two. So I will meet with both of those. You know that game we played as a child when you start on this side of the room and you whisper something in one person's ear, and by the time it gets over here, it's a totally different story? Well, I'm going to make sure that that hasn't happened, that something that was a myth has now turned into the truth or the perceived truth. So I'm going to sit down with both of the organizations and talk to them and see what the issues are. Now, I can imagine some of the issues, and I've done a little research, and it has to do with the representation in promotions, representation in transfers, representation throughout the police department. So I'm going to make sure that, you know what, if that's an issue, we're going to address that issue. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I hold myself accountable, but you know what, I hold the department accountable. And if there are some practices that are incorrect or improper, we're going to make sure that we correct those things. So I'm going to sit down and talk to everyone. I'm going to talk to both of the organizations. I understand there's more than two, but the two that the emphasis is those two. And I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But I'm also going to listen to hear what the issues are. And if there's issues to be addressed, we're going to address those issues. Thank you.
St. Louis is passionate. We know that. Another question that was submitted multiple times in different forms was, will you call for and/or support an independent investigation unit external to the St. Louis Police Department related to police shootings? And we'll start with you, Mr. O'Toole.
I have no issues with an independent review of any of the incidents that go on in the St. Louis Police Department. There's an issue regarding police shooting. The Ferguson Commission called for an independent review. I support that. And so I have no problem supporting an independent review of any police shooting review to be conducted by a third party with an oversight by the Circuit Attorney's Office and as well as U.S. Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. No one's immune from accountability. If there are means and there's some trust issues in our community and an independent unit is asked for, I don't have a problem with that. I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the investigation that's being occurred. That means our district attorney or the county attorney, whatever the proper terminology is here, we're going to do that. But the most important thing is we want to make sure that we do a proper and thorough investigation and make sure that everything is uncovered that needs to be uncovered, everything is investigated that needs to be investigated, and we want to definitely build the trust of our community. If our community is saying that they want an independent unit, absolutely we'll get that. If it's a federal unit, we'll get that. Whatever the community needs, we're going to make sure that the trust and they can believe that when the investigation is complete, that it's a thorough and complete investigation. So yes, I do not have a problem with independent investigation agency that does police shootings as far as the police department is concerned. Thank you.
Yes, I also support the idea of independent investigations conducted by other agencies. I know currently we don't have that. I know that the Ferguson Commission actually talked about the Highway Patrol leading some of those investigations. And so in the interim, certainly there's nothing that prevents us. You know, we could have a collaboration to start some type of task force with St. Louis County Police Department. They're the second largest next to us. And so absolutely support the idea, and I think there's something that we can probably do in the interim that kind of mimics the idea of what potentially the Highway Patrol would do.
The short answer is absolutely. In the city of Dallas, we've had an outstanding partnership with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, who established a public integrity unit specifically for officer-involved shootings. I was over the violent crime section of the Dallas Police Department, which includes the Special Investigation Unit, which handles officer-involved shootings. As you can imagine, in a city the size of Dallas and similar here in St. Louis, your homicide detectives have the most experience of any of the surrounding smaller agencies just by the sheer volume of crime. But the facts are the facts when it comes to a critical incident like that. An independent review is going to reveal the same set of facts, and it's going to verify and show that you have an agency that you can trust, that they're both going to come to the same conclusion, and they're going to do so in an open, transparent way. And I'll go a step further, and I'll tell you that we will work even harder to push out information in a timely fashion. One of the things I did in Dallas over the Media Relations Unit is begin to push out timely information via social media so that you don't just get a trickle to one particular news agency. You hear it straight from the department, what happened, the status of the officer or the injured as soon as we can update you, and within roughly 48 hours, we tell you who was involved and how long their tenure is, because the public wants to know who is the officer that was involved in that shooting, because you want to know what kind of record do they have. Do they have a history of abuse and allegations, or do they have a clear history as far as discipline goes? And it's important that you get that information and you get it in a timely fashion. So I'll push for that as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, I support that. Let me give you an example. My current department, we had one of our high-ranking officers, his ex-wife, was found dead. There was some question: was he involved? Was he not involved? Was he even in town? We started talking to our detectives, our major case detectives, and right off the bat, you started seeing that they were too close to both individuals. I did not hesitate to call the State Bureau of Investigations to handle that investigation. I think it was the best thing to do. As a matter of fact, I know it was the best thing to do. The community was very thankful. They trust us, knowing that I have no problem going outside. We have nothing to hide, and we need to change things. We've always, in law enforcement, we've always wanted to keep our marbles in front of us, and we've never wanted to share. We have a responsibility. If that's what the citizens call for, then that's what they call for. Now, you have to be really careful what organization that you get to investigate these shootings. You do. And you want to make sure you have the best organization that's investigating. Just because they are a larger department, just because they have renown in front of them, doesn't mean they're the best. And so that's why, as a chief, you have to get to know each and every leader of every organization in the immediate area, so if something did happen, you would feel comfortable with passing that on. Any chief that says that he has something to hide and not allow open investigations or outside investigators, there's a problem right there. Because if you want it done right, and you want it to be impartial, and you want people to trust you, that's what you have to do. It doesn't mean every time that's going to happen, but there are situations where that's what you need to do. When people are too close to the situation, the question does come up: can they fairly investigate? And so, absolutely, I think that's a process that we would need to have. Thank you.
Okay. I believe we're as high as, currently with officer-involved shootings, maybe as high as 17 to 20. That's very high. It seems like our average the past years, probably since 2012 to 2014, I look at the numbers, 11 or 12 of them, which is not good either, but we have to protect and serve. Independent investigative unit, if that's what you want, that's what you'll get. Transparency is key. We need to work harder and longer with, and get to foster better relationships with the General Attorney's Office, and certainly with the Circuit Attorney's Office, Kim Gardner. I plan to bond with her and to learn from her, her needs to get her job done, because when our officers lock up people, we need for them to stay locked up. And I need for her to have the manpower and staffing she needs to get the job done, and I'm going to work real hard with her. Accountability is really, really, really important. Responsibility. And we're responsible for being accountable. We need to be accountable. We need to be held accountable. Complete and thorough investigations. What you deserve is exactly what you'll get. Social media. I need for my public information manager. I see that she's in the audience right now. We're going to make sure if I'm chief, she's going to be fully staffed. She's going to have her hands full with me, because I'm going to be out there mingling and making sure you guys know what you need to know in a timely fashion. The quicker we can get that information out, it dispels rumors, the myths. You have an idea of what we're doing, and you need to know. There's no secrecy here. One of the gentlemen said, we don't have anything to hide, and you need to know. We will not leave you out of the informational loop. Thank you.
Thank you all. As you would imagine, one of the also frequently asked questions from the community had to do with issues of race and racism. So the question that I pose now is, as a leader of the St. Louis Police Department, how will you institutionalize anti-racism within the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department at every level? And we'll start with you.
I'll tell you right now, if you're a St. Louis police officer and you have a desire to express some sort of racist message, it's time to leave. It's time to go. It will not be tolerated. It will not be condoned in the slightest fashion. That and bullying, sexual harassment, any of those things are completely and wholly counter to what we stand for as police officers. And it will not be tolerated. And that goes back to the process and trusting that process and holding people accountable, asking the questions. We know what the officers are supposed to do. How do we know that they're doing that? And the frontline supervisors are where it starts, and holding those officers accountable, put the officers through a training academy, weed out the ones that don't fit, put them through the training academy, and teach them and inculcate them into our culture that respects people regardless of race, creed, gender preference, sexual preference, or orientation. None of that should matter. We are all blue, and we are police officers, and we need to respect the community and respect each other. It will not be tolerated, plain and simple. There's no question about that.
Yes. It's been a while since the beginning, and people have forgotten your names. So will you say your name when you come to the mic this time?
So I've done it very confusingly. As a child, I got my mom to call my brothers and me by our middle name. Stephen Max Geron from Dallas. And I will say that I do have a tie to the city. I don't like to mention it. When my dad was stationed at Scott Air Force Base, we used to come over to the old Busch Stadium for Cardinals games, and I have this memory of being disciplined for taking the little popcorn thing and yelling in the ear of the guy in front of me. It's bad.
Absolutely. It's Keith Humphrey, and I also have ties to the city. I left some tax dollars at the mall, and so that's my ties to the city. All right, yeah, listen, this is what I'd like to share with you all. It starts with training. It starts, and there's a perception in law enforcement that when you go through the academy and you do the continuing ed classes on an annual basis, there are some major components in some cities that don't even exist. So we go and we shoot, we go and we shoot our weapons, we learn our defensive tactics, but we don't on a continually basis deal with emotional intelligence of officers. We don't deal with that. We have this perception that officers are stone-faced, they're hard-shelled, that they're not human, but they are. And we forget that to take care of our officers, and if we take care of our officers with peer support and early intervention, I don't know if any of you all are familiar with early intervention. The reason why a lot of officers react and carry on the way that they do is because we do not utilize our evaluation periods and our early intervention programs wisely. Those are the first steps in determining if someone has a problem. Also, the hiring process.
We're concerned about the murder of young black men by armed police officers taking their lives, sir. That's why we're here.
Understand.
We're concerned about that.
I understand.
I don't care about interventions or making something sociable. We're concerned about white police officers who gun down our children.
Understand, sir.
We're concerned about the social economic ills that come into this community that causes this. That's what we're concerned about.
Understand. Duly noted.
We're concerned about the Jason Stockmans of the world who run down and kill an innocent person.
And if you would allow me to finish, I was going to get to that. If you'd allow me to finish.
His name is, sir.
I understand.
His name was Anthony Lamar Smith.
Yes, sir. Very familiar with that case. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very familiar with the case. And as I said before, a lot of it goes back to training. De-escalation. De-escalation. Training officers to not put themselves in that position. A lot of times, I've looked at a lot of the issues that have gone on throughout the country when it comes to officer-involved shooting. a percentage of those incidents, the officer put themselves in that position to have to utilize deadly force. We have to go back and retrain these officers. We have to go back and make sure we hire the same person, the right people. We have to make sure that we utilize our evaluation period. We have to stress to our officers that when they see something, when they hear something, that's not funny. If you join in and you don't report bias, unjust, you're just as culpable as the officer that's doing it. And so you have to make sure that there's a system in place to hold people accountable. And that system starts with the chief. That system starts with the chief.
I recently attended some specific anti-bias, anti-racism training that was 2 days long. It was 2 days long, and it was very impactful. And what was impactful about it is that we've already had implicit bias training, and really it really didn't get to some of the sources of or the origins of white supremacy, the origins of historical trauma, and I've found that a lot of times that officers that may not have grown up around African Americans, a lot of white officers that haven't grown up around African Americans, have had some biases that they weren't aware of and things that they were taught by their parents. And you never hold something what your parents taught you. The key is that when you learn better, you should do better. And so that particular seminar really got into the depths of racism and got into the depths of historical trauma, got into the origins of white supremacy. And it caused some dialogue within the room that I think people certainly appreciated. And so that was one thing as chief, what I would do is I would start with the top, we would start at the top and work our way down for that type of training. So it's a lot more meatier than just implicit bias training. It really gets down to white privilege, things like that. And it really deals with some of the problems that we really face as a community. I'm sorry. My name is John Hayden. John Hayden. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Melvin, Chief of the St. Louis. No, I'm sorry. I'm not Chief. Patrick Melvin. The bottom line, folks, is the buck stops with me. It is incumbent upon the chief to establish a culture of accountability. If the chief makes it very clear, shares that vision and that leadership with the leadership of the police department, that kind of action is not going to be tolerated, it will end. Now, with that being said, we have to work also with the different entities within the city to include the city legal office, because there's going to be litigation. The Human Resources Department, because there's going to be people losing their jobs. So we need to make sure our stuff is legit. Our operations reports, our investigation reports are appropriate, proper, and completed. It is about establishing a professional culture. Now, I know that the City of St. Louis Police Department is nationally accredited. But just because we are nationally accredited doesn't mean we're following our own policies. So we need to make sure that we are following our own policies, doing the right thing, even when no one is looking. And that's the job that I do as a police chief. Racism, inappropriate behavior, harassment, inappropriate whatever is not going to be accepted, not going to be tolerated. And as I mentioned before, no one's immune from accountability. They will be held accountable and brought to the proper adjudication and disposition. Again, I have to establish that culture. I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to do that, and I'm prepared to do that now. Chief Patrick Melvin, your future chief. Thank you.
Larry O'Toole. Racism, discrimination, any type of biases will not be tolerated under my command. And it is about training. It's about implicit bias training. But let me tell you what it's really even about more than that. It's about screening our applicants better to ensure that we're not hiring these people in the first place. It's about proper psychological ahead of time to go through that type of training.
All right, you finish your thought there?
I said that racism would not be tolerated. When I make decisions, I'll make my decisions the same way that they do in the Ferguson report, and that is to use the racial equity lens assessment in making the decisions. Thank you.
Okay, our final question. Our final question, you each get 2 minutes to speak to the question. What is it about you that separates you from all the other candidates and should be the leading reason why you were selected for this position? And we'll start with
He can lie now. Well, not actually, that's not true either. His frequency of stats is not a good measure of success.
Hello. What separates me, I think it's pretty obvious. I was looking at the View not long ago, and Megyn Kelly said it best. Not Megyn Kelly, but Meghan McCain, I'm sorry. She said that we need to have more women in leadership roles. That's why I'm here. I am an advocate of promotion. I am an advocate of professional development. At my job, I conduct promotional training, and I encourage my charges to take every test, every opportunity to better themselves, to get promoted through the ranks. But I'm no harder than I am on the females. They have got to take advantage of the opportunities that are before them. That's part of the reason I'm here. And then there's a 94-year-old woman out in Hillsdale. She's watching me on TV, seeing her daughter, the youngest of 12, who can vie for the chief of police position in the city of St. Louis. What's unfortunate about us in St. Louis is the fact that we are often deemed as policing as if we're in the 1960s. We're sometimes called the South. We've got to get better. We've got to get more progressive. We're good at a lot of things. We catch bad guys. We're very good at that. But we have got to improve our communications with the community. We have got to build trust. We have got to get you guys back on board and got to get your input. And we need your understanding. We can't humiliate you. You shouldn't be humiliating us. We should be working together. Seek not to defeat your opponent, but defeat injustice. That's what we should be working on. I'm sure that's why most of us are here. Like I said earlier, when I first got here, I'm from Pure Idaho. Folks like me don't end up in roles like this, but here I am. And I want to go further. I want to be your chief. Please give me an opportunity to do exactly that. Thank you. I am Captain Mary Edwards Fears. Thank you.
Okay. Clock's not running yet, is it? My 2 minutes, okay. I was born to do this. I was born to lead. I'm a student of the profession. I listen. I listen to everyone. There's not a person that I do not find the time to speak with. I bring an unbiased opinion to this organization, a fresh set of eyes. A little bit about me that you don't know. I've been the outside candidate in 2 chiefs processes. The organizations that I led were both, one was an African-American community of which was 75% African-American. The police department was 85% white. The city that I work in now is a former sundown town. If you're not aware of that, that's basically if you were a person of color, you could not be out after a certain time. But I was selected as chief of a department that was another 83% white department. I hold people accountable. I tell the stories. I've lived those stories. I understand what each and every one of you are saying, and I understand what each and every one of the law enforcement officers are saying. Enough is enough. We've got to make this work. I can help make this work. I don't sleep. I'm always thinking. I'm always wondering how we can make things better. I'm thinking 10 days ahead of time, a year ahead of time. That's why I want to be your chief. This is a good city, but we've got to stop saying it's a tragic city, it's a violent city. We have to stop saying that we have all this racial dissension, because I believe there's some issues, but I do not believe this city's divided. Because I'm looking out in the community right now, in the audience right now, and I see people that care. Yes, there's problems. We have to accept that there's problems. But we can fix those problems how do you eat an apple? One bite at a time. And I'm that man. I'm that person. And I look forward to being your chief of police, and I look forward to you holding me accountable for everything I've said today. Thank you.
Once again, Major Max Geron. I've got a beautiful, almost 11-year-old daughter, McKenna, and a 6-year-old son, Jackson. And we have some incredible conversations about what it means to support people's rights and to champion those that can't fight for themselves and protect a city. St. Louis is at a point where the story can get a whole lot better. And you can look back on this time and say, wow, we didn't see the way forward, but Chief Geron saw the way forward and partnered with the community and made us a part of policing ourselves and brought us into a department that we have faith in, that we trust, that we can call without fear of reprisal, that we can call because we know that those officers that work the beat every day care about us because we talk with them and we meet with them. And they're not just people that we call in 911 and that's the only time that we see them. They're not the ones that are just stopping us, profiling us, or writing us tickets that we can't pay on top of tickets that we can't pay. They are a police department that cares about the community, cares that we live in houses that are next to houses that should have been torn down 5 years ago. We are working with a chief that is partnering with the state and federal government to take down these houses that don't belong next to where children play every day. We are working with a police department that has empowered us to decide what policies they use and what policies they don't, what technologies they use and what technologies they don't. And we are proud that we have the best police department that is a national example to the rest of the police departments across the country. That is what I can come here to do. That is what I want to come here to do, and I appreciate the opportunity to engage with you. And I imagine there's going to be an appointment in January that's going to bring you into the office and hear what other things you have to say. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry O'Toole. I am committed to positive change. I know this city and this department better than anybody. I have seen the positive changes that happens. We need to look around the community. I mentioned earlier, there are many good things going on in this city. The development, Barnes Hospital, the NGA, the Union Station, expansion of the Arch Grounds. There are many good things that are going on, and we need to leverage all those changes and come together. The issues in our city that we need to deal with, the unemployment, the poverty, the dysfunctional families, the drugs and alcohol abuse, we have to come together to address those issues, just like we came together to bring the NGA here, just like we come together for Cortex and all these other developments. If we all work together, we can all address these issues. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Melvin. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. My name is Patrick Melvin, and I'm a candidate for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department Police Chief, Police Commissioner position. What are my attributes, or why should I be your police chief? First of all, I'm about mission accomplishment, and that mission is the perception of safety in this community. My goal is to be proactive in nature, find solutions to problems before they happen, be professional and progressive, be accountable not only to myself, accountable to the department, accountable to the community. You know, it was mentioned earlier, I have 2 sons, and they look like me. And I want a community in that I can go to sleep at night and know that the officers, if they get stopped by the police, that they're going to be safe. My son was a student here for 3 years. And I remember the several nights just praying that he was going to be okay. Graduation day was a beautiful day. But you know what? One of the things my son said was, Dad, you get the job, I'd like to come join the force. You know, that's something. And if you know my son, that is major. He actually did an internship his senior year at Ferguson Police Department because he wants to make a difference. Imagine the other people in this community who go to school in this community. St. Louis University here in St. Louis, Webster, Harris Stowe. All these kids that are in the criminal justice program that are going into different professions. We need those young people that can make a difference on our police department. And that's what I want to bring. I want to bring it so that we have our department, our city is conducive to new ideas, to the future of this community, to have these young, smart minds that could come and contribute to our police department, to our city, being a part of that. So as your police chief, that's what I'd like to do. I look forward to your support, and I look forward to communicating and partnership with you in the near future. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
My name is John Hayden. I have a stellar reputation. Reputation is not what you think of yourself. Reputation is what people say about you. I know many of you know policemen. Just ask them. I got a proven track record. I've had various very high-level assignments. I've been a good police officer. I've only had a written reprimand in 30 years. I'm a fair and inclusive individual. If you think somebody is a member of a group that you think is sometimes marginalized, you ask them about me if they work on our department, and they'll tell you. I have the leadership skills to lead the department. I've seen some aldermen in this room, and they can tell you that I'm a community leader, and I work closely with them. I also attended the town hall meetings that we had to decide whether or not what you all were looking for in a chief. You all talked about integrity, you talked about transparency, you talked about accountability. I was the commander of the Internal Affairs Division for 6 years. I had to put officers in prison. I have no compunction about that when it comes to people that put the agency's integrity in jeopardy. You deserve accountability. You'll have accountability through me. I didn't tell you earlier that I've been married for 28 years. I have 3 beautiful daughters. I grew up here. I played football at WashU, in case you thought I was just a big guy for no reason. And hey, I love this city. I've been here. I've never left. I've been here the whole time. And I'd love to serve as your chief of police. Thank you.
Please join me in giving a round of applause to the candidates for the chief of police position. And please accept my thanks to each of you for coming and participating in this forum and helping them to get a sense of the community that they want to serve. Thank you all. Travel safe. Good night.